very strange that I have a large nose, and I'll tell you why.
I guess you're privileged to have a big nose then, because you don't live in harsh conditions.
The habanero one? Holy fuck, dude. Woo! You know, maybe I've been treating this bike as some sort of parkour bike when really it's just a...
I once came face to face with a wild rhinoceros. That was pretty crazy.
I got stung by a bee once. Welcome back to the Burning Boat Show. We are back with a special guest today, Casper Christiansen. He is, well, first of all, let's thank our patrons. Thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. If you want to help us out with the podcast or our business, head on over to Patreon, link down below. Like I said, we are here today with Casper Christiansen. He runs the podcast, I'm going to fuck this up, Plantetinget.
That was pretty good. That was
pretty good?
Yeah.
He also does, and we're going to find out more about this, a vegan baby formula.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah?
It's quite illegal to commercialize on it, like make commercials and market it. So
can we do? We can talk about it though, or
yeah, I think we can.
Okay, we can always cut it out. And most importantly, he is a Wolt delivery driver.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Really?
That's like my top merit.
Nice.
And we actually know him through Nicholas Kingo, who's been on our podcast as well.
It's Nicholas Kingo.
It's Nicholas Kingo, everybody. And I believe he started the podcast with you, the podcast that you run.
That's
now.
true. Yeah.
You guys started it together?
I was traveling in Thailand, and I video documented it on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. And he just wrote to me. No, I think actually we started connecting on Instagram. He started following me, and I was following back.
Okay.
Like follow for follow. And then he just started commenting, and then he wrote me when I was in Thailand and said, "Hey, I'm also in Thailand. Let's make something nice when we go back. Come back to Denmark." And then we started from there.
Okay.
Then we met up at a cafe and ate small lunch together and talked about it. And I bought a microphone, and yeah, it all started from there.
How long ago did you start the podcast?
So that was February 2017.
Okay.
So that's 2 years and 11 months ago? No.
Almost 3 years, right?
Almost 3 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. I kind of want to start the conversation with going obviously into your background, and I know that you are vegan. I don't know if you call yourself a vegan or if you just eat plant-based. But I kind of looked through your Instagram, and I kind of wanted to start with, it seems like there might have been a point in your life where you kind of made a big turn.
Sure.
Maybe we can start there.
Sure.
Talking about that, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the big turn.
Yeah.
Well, what you call it?
I saw a photo on Instagram where you were talking in front of, I think, like 200 students or something.
Oh yeah.
You had two pictures of yourself. One where you're drinking a beer. The other one you're like absolutely shredded. And I was like, I think we relate to it because we both are very into like bettering ourselves and trying to, you know, that kind of moment where you kind of decide, you know what, I gotta fucking change something in my life a little bit. Yeah. Sure.
Well, I had a very comfortable upbringing in Frederiksberg.
Okay.
Like the center town municipality of Copenhagen is like, it's very safe, it's very comfortable, it's very nice. And I had a nice upbringing with some nice parents that just made me do whatever I felt like. So I had a very free upbringing. You know, they never told me what to do. They never had any like big expectations of me other than just succeeding in school. Yeah. But school was always quite easy for me. But I think the lack of demand from my parents and the lack of kind of not really setting any like big expectations for me meant that I got very confused about what I wanted to do with my life. And that really manifested itself through high school, for example, gymnasiet, as we call it in Denmark, where I was like, fuck this, and started smoking pot, and I kind of felt indifferent towards what people told me and the stuff I had to learn and all that. And I think at the end of high school, I think I kind of hit my low point, and that's where the picture that you're referring to is coming from, because I was working at McDonald's and was just really smoking a lot of pot, and you know, I was just totally indifferent to where I wanted to go in my life. So, and that was kind of how I lived my life until I think one of the things that really started me on a journey on bettering myself and getting to setting goals and kind of start getting a direction in life was that I set myself a goal that I wanted to run a marathon. So I was like, yeah, I want to run a marathon. And then when you set yourself a goal, then you kind of have to structure your life in such a way that everything in your life has to kind of make room for that or feed into that.
Right.
So I kind of arranged my life. And I just saw that, wow, okay, I set a goal. I can achieve it if I set up a structure in my life so as I can achieve it. And that was a really, really rewarding feeling when I crossed the line in the exact time that I've set for myself. It wasn't too hard. It wasn't too little. It wasn't too bad. You know, I've just set the bar as high as I knew I could jump over, but it would require a maximum amount of effort from me. Yeah. And I did that. So that was super satisfying. So I just started looking into how could I further improve and how can I optimize all of these processes that goes into developing and achieving goals in my life. So it kind of took off from there, and I got into triathlon and more sports, because the good thing about doing sports is that it's very clear that whichever effort you put into it, you get a result. You get a number.
It's a measurable result.
Yeah.
You get a quantifiable result. And you can see, okay, I've been training this many hours. It gives this output. So, and it's just super satisfying and super rewarding. And what I did was I was starting at that moment in my life. I think I was 21 or 22 or something like that. I really started nerding these YouTube channels about bettering yourself and eating healthy and all that. And then I came across this whole NoFap thing, like abstaining from masturbation.
Okay.
And,
right.
And the funny thing about those guys that were advocating this message of abstaining from masturbation, they were also every one of them was vegan. All of them were like super much into eating healthy and, you know, not harm animals and not masturbating.
Yeah.
and
ever masturbating, or for like a period of time?
Well, they wanted to live a lifestyle where the sexual desire wasn't that much of a factor controlling their decision making in life, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So like, you know, some philosophers say that, you know, the sexual desire is the most powerful energy in the universe. Yeah. So if you can harness that and pour it into other projects, then you might get some nice results. And I experimented a lot with that. So yeah, that was a really interesting time in my life.
Well, you hear like fighters won't have sex or anything like months before a fight to build up this insane amount of just like power.
Yeah.
Is there any science behind that?
I don't know.
Is there any measurable?
I mean, I would assume.
I think it's primarily anecdotal. Okay. I think there was, as far as I've heard, there was one study that measured testosterone serum levels in the blood.
Yeah.
That showed a significant spike around day 7 of not ejaculating in men. Right. But it was like this only study, and I think the sample size was very small. Yeah. And I think that's only one of the only studies that's been done that has showed a significant result. So I'm not sure. But
you were saying that in high school you felt a little lost.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that. When I was in, for me, it came a little later. The thing is, I didn't feel like I was lost in the sense that I was very clear about the fact that I wanted to make films, and I knew that from high school already, and I went to study at university, study film. So I was very much on this path of doing that. But I think what happened, and I maybe can relate a little bit to the, like, having such a comfortable upbringing that suddenly you're thrown into a more realistic situation and things aren't as easy as you maybe thought, or you aren't as good as you thought, for example. It just hit me really hard in university, and I started drinking a lot. It became a serious issue. I tried to quit multiple times, and finally,
I think, quit drinking.
Yeah,
like totally.
Yeah, and I've been sober now for 2 years, and before that, I was sober for over a year, and I had a relapse 2 years ago. But what changed, what finally kind of was the time when it stuck, like committing to a new way of living, was also when I started running a marathon or training for a marathon.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it was something that I very clearly remember the feeling of like, oh, I feel like craving alcohol right now. And I know that this comes and goes, and it's only a matter of time before it gets so strong that I'm going to have to give into it. And it's like an inevitable thing in my head. And I can go maybe like a month before I have to act on it. But what changed was I was like, okay, I need to do something different. I'm going to go for a run. It's not like I would call myself like an athletic high schooler, if that is a thing. You know, I did a lot of sports, so it's not like it was new for me. But I decided to go on a run specifically to deal with my mentality and not work out my body. And I clearly remember the run. It was in London, and I ran, you know, like, I think like 4 kilometers or something. And afterwards, I didn't feel that craving anymore. And I felt like something had changed. And I was aware that I was then able to do something about what I'm feeling by moving my body physically. And so I set the goal of running a marathon. And I had a very similar experience, it sounds like, to what you did, setting a time, running it, getting that time, and then now that's something I want to continue to do.
Where does that come from, the want to run a marathon?
Is
it just something?
Yeah, it is.
know?
I think it's something. It's
like
something that's
something people
accessible.
respect.
First, it's something that you don't need anything to be able to do it.
Yeah.
No equipment.
Yeah.
You can go out and you can train anywhere in the world. And I think it's something that is well known. Yeah. And it is like a benchmark of a challenge. It is of a caliber.
It seems like a universal bucket list sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's like the
you
next
want to have
step
run a
up.
marathon one time in your life.
It's
or
kind of
something.
like, some virtue signaling thing about it, right?
That as well, but I think it also is something that is challenging enough to be respectable.
Yeah.
For someone who's run a marathon, you know someone else who's run a marathon, you know that they did a lot to do that.
Yeah.
So it's like it's hard enough that it like is worth something, I guess, socially.
Sure.
But one thing I also realized was that, you know, you kind of realize, or at least I did, that I may have some addictive tendencies towards different drugs, like alcohol. I was also drinking a lot, like party heavily on weekends, and really like getting myself shit-faced as fucked, and like also smoking a lot of pot, and you know, just seeing how far could I push these boundaries with my perception, and that's what drugs can do for you, but that's also what like sports can do for
100%.
you. So I think I kind of changed that and said, okay, maybe let's try to change that addiction
to something better.
Yeah,
that has more
value,
of a positive effect in your life. It's totally the same.
Yeah,
it's something I need to be addicted to something.
Sure.
And it's better for it to be physical in the form of running. I mean, now we've started climbing as well, which I'm really into.
Oh yeah. Did you do a lot of sports before, Taylor?
I always did sports, but I was never like crazy about it. I never wanted to be like, I never had the dream of being a professional athlete or anything like that. It was just something I grew up doing. I played soccer growing up and then switched to volleyball. It became almost more of a social thing.
Sure.
My friends were there, which is a really fun thing to do. And then I went to college and I stopped doing anything. And I had no idea how much doing physical activity helps you with depression and all these other things, right? And I think it took me a long time to realize that I can't just sit around and do nothing. You know, I have to go out. Even now, I'm trying very hard to like go out for a run every other day or go climbing, do something. Because when the light gets low early, I get horrible habits. I get really a little bit depressed if I don't do anything, you know?
Sure.
It's almost like a necessity for me.
Yeah.
I think addiction is an interesting topic because I've been, for November, I actually wasn't going to talk about this until next week. I had kind of said in November I'm trying out a bunch of minor life changes. And I won't go into all of them, but it's funny enough, one of the things I decided to do was not masturbate for all of November.
No, not November.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Which sounds like such a ridiculous thing, right? It's such a weird thing to bring up. I brought it up to a couple of friends, and they're like, what the fuck?
That's why you've been so intense recently.
But that's true. There's so many people that are just laughing it off, and they don't understand it, and they don't want to understand it.
Well, the thing is, I don't know, for me, it's like with the power of the sexual whatever, it's more just the discipline of it, right?
Sure.
Because I think, in a way, can you be addicted to small pleasurable things that you just like your phone as well, just these little dopamine hits that you're not even aware of are kind of running your life to a certain extent, right? Not that I'm at home masturbating all day, right? But it's like all these little factors, you know, watching YouTube, being on your phone, all these little dopamine hits that you try to gather throughout the day, and just kind of looking at that. And I said in November, I want to try to be in control. Like if I decide to check my phone, I want it to be because I made the decision to go to my phone and check the phone, right? And I think it's incredibly hard to do for some reason. And I saw on your Instagram page as well, this is now translated from Danish to English. But I saw that you wrote, "They have used my reward system against me and I sit back like a fucking rat in a cage."
Sure.
And you were talking about your phone as well.
Yeah, sure.
And you had said that you had turned it to grayscale, which is interesting, something I hadn't heard of yet.
Well, it's really nice. So I'll show you guys here.
Yeah.
So what you do is actually the new phones. I just bought this one, but all the new phones they have this. You go into the settings, and in Danish it's called digitalt velbefindende. I think it's called digitally feeling good.
Okay. Right.
And it has this timer or this function where you can just say relax. And then it turns it into grayscale.
Okay.
Turns down the volume and all. So
And it's just less stimulating for you when
less
you're...
stimulating. A lot
Right.
less stimulating. So what I noticed with doing that, because I've been doing this for now 2 or 3 months, is that colors in everyday life gets more nice and interesting and intense. You know, I look more at trees. I notice the leaves lying on the ground, the colors of the leaves. I just stand there and just watch it. And just really enjoy and embrace looking at, you know, the trees. Just,
real life.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting.
But sometimes I turn the colors on my phone and it's super intense.
Yeah.
It's like so intense. You know, I don't think we know how stimulating
It actually
this
is.
stuff
No,
is.
It's like turning on your phone and at night and you forgot to turn the brightness down.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my fucking God.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you think pleasure is bad?
No. I think there's things I enjoy that I just do over and over. I don't want to say I have an addictive personality because I don't really know what that means. Just liking pleasure seems like, well, everybody's like that. But I kind of, maybe abuse it to the point where it's not that pleasurable anymore. Because, I don't think it's a bad thing, but I think I want to be in control of when I choose to do something pleasurable and when I choose to do something.
Okay.
I think it's bad if it's pleasure only in the short term.
Sure.
I think you have to be aware of when you have something where you're getting like instant gratification, something that isn't something you actually experience more pain from later. I don't think we actually do anything. We want to avoid pain.
Sure.
And we want to gain pleasure at all costs. And the key is to figure out how to find something painful, pleasurable if it's going to help you out. And that's when you start to do something new.
Yeah.
That's when you
also the
associate more
pleasurable
pleasure with it than pain.
Yeah, they become more pleasurable if you abstain a little bit, right?
Yeah, totally.
So
totally.
like a weird example, but if you masturbate 7 days in a row or wait 7 days and masturbate, that 7th day masturbation is going to be better
Sure.
than each single one.
Sure.
And I think in the same way, it almost goes with a lot of things in life. One thing I also am curious about is dealing with. Are you on social media?
Yeah, sure.
You are?
Yeah.
Do you have any problems with it, with the instant gratification? Do you ever try to abstain from it at all or anything?
I try to abstain from it. Yeah, you know, the good thing about Instagram is that it provides a measure of how much time you've been using on the app.
Right.
So I try to kind of monitor my own use.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just go on the computer and don't think about it and do it there.
Right.
So it always kind of sneaks back on me in some weird way.
Yeah. I always have this weird thing where I want to abstain from it, but then I also see the benefits of it, right? Especially if you own a company, trying to connect with people.
Yeah.
You know, that is a way to be sociable in our present time. It's just part of our culture and everything. So I find this weird balance where sometimes I'm like, fuck it all, I'm going to delete it all. I don't want any of it. Yeah. I don't like it. I don't like the way it makes me feel most of the time. But then this weird necessity for it in a way. you know?
But what I would advise you to do is, for example, I went to a lecture yesterday.
Yeah.
And there was a small break where you can talk to people and be sociable and stuff. And, you know, to these kind of events, I just don't bring my phone. I just keep it at home.
Yeah.
And it really forces me to like entertain myself.
That's good.
And how can I entertain myself? Well, I start talking to people.
Yeah.
Because I'm a social person. I'm a social being. And I had a really nice conversation yesterday. And while we had this conversation, in my peripheral vision of the whole place, I could see loads of people being on their phones.
Yeah.
And we had a really enjoyable conversation about plant-based yogurts. And everybody was just looking at their phones. And, you know, I just think we just need to be aware. Like, being aware is like just the first step. But I also have another question, because I think we could dig deeper into the think pleasure here. Do you guys feel ashamed sometimes about receiving or having pleasurable experiences?
Yeah.
Like, do you feel shameful when you masturbate?
No, not so much masturbation.
What about eating cake? Eating something really delicious?
Do you know what really makes me feel ashamed? Is, like, weirdly enough, something like watching a YouTube video at night or watching YouTube for 30 minutes when I feel like I should be reading or watching a movie. Or I beat myself up over that fucking hour that I would spend, 30 minutes that I would spend.
Yeah.
Because it feels like such a waste of time. But it's just it's a very pleasurable thing. There are these short videos, right? It's super quick cut. It's super stimulating.
No, it's just like, you don't have to, you like switch off your brain.
That as well.
It's easier.
Yeah.
Sure. It's not, I don't even know if it's more pleasurable, because I really enjoy reading. And I sleep a lot better afterwards.
If you read?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
So it's like, there's all that's pleasurable about it.
Yeah.
But there's something that is actually harder to make that choice than to just quickly watch a YouTube video before falling asleep.
Takes more willpower.
Yeah, so in that sense, I would say I feel shame from feeling a more quicker, pleasure.
What about you?
I've been feeling a lot of shame around sex and masturbation.
Really?
I've really been feeling a lot of shame about that. And because it's so connected to pleasure as well.
Right.
So that's something I've been working with and struggling with, but I don't think I have a perfect answer to why I do feel shame. But I think it's so interconnected into our culture, you know, like the Catholic Church and the Christian Church has just been hardcore shaming everybody about sex and all that.
It's a little taboo.
Yeah, totally. So
it's like, I wouldn't go around talking about it, but I don't think I'd feel shame in the moment.
No.
Which is like slightly kind of saying the same thing. You're like, it's a contradiction is what I'm saying, a little bit.
But shame is just such a powerful emotion because it kind of controls people, right?
Yeah.
Or they control people's actions at least it has been in my case, controlling my action in doing pleasurable stuff. You know, because I feel sometimes I can feel ashamed if I indulge into a really nice cake, or I eat something which I know is not super healthy for me, but really tastes good and is really satiating and satisfying, and so I can feel shame about that as well. Yeah, sometimes.
I think it's like, for me, I would only feel that if it were like I had a piece of cake yesterday and now I'm having another one.
Okay.
So it's like I already got that, like, if you could call it a reward, because I do think it's important to reward yourself whatever way you choose to do that, right?
Sure.
Again, trying to make something that maybe is painful in the moment have a pleasurable outcome also in the short term, like something like training for, a triathlon or an Ironman. It's painful in the moment, and if you every so often reward yourself afterwards, it's more likely to stick as a habit, because the long-term benefits take a long time before you see them. But then I think there's a point where it crosses over from being a justifiable reward of pleasure to, well, now you didn't need that reward at that point. It became like it's like an impulse kind of thing. I guess coming back to being aware of when and how you're using it.
It's funny, like sometimes I really work hard on a goal and then I achieve the goal, and then I reward myself and get pleasure from the reward I give myself, and then I feel shameful about it. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
What is wrong with me? Why do I feel like... Do you ever experience that?
Doing something, then rewarding yourself and feeling the... I think I can relate a little bit, because something about... I used to do a lot of challenges where I would say, okay, for 30 days, I'm going to do this one thing, right? And I would do it for those 30 days, and then right after the 30 days, I would kind of go back to living my old life.
You'd like binge it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
and then I was like, what the fuck was the point of the 30 days?
The discipline.
It was just to prove that I could do it or whatever. So maybe in that way, I think the reward being I get to do the thing again that I've been abstaining from. I think maybe specifically with pleasure as well, maybe the difference between instant gratification, meaning like short-term pleasure spikes, as opposed to long-term pleasure, which I think can be kind of hard to track at some points. Like, I think you need a lot of things in life that kind of give you small doses of pleasure. What's the way to say it?
Well, everything can't just be long-term. I think to be sustainable about something, you have to have intermediate rewards of some kind.
Yeah, definitely.
If everything you do is only going to be pleasurable later, I think you'd have to be a special kind of human to be able to continue doing it.
Right.
What do you
Okay,
think?
but what about pain? Sorry if I'm cutting your thread of
No,
thought
I
here,
don't know.
Taylor,
I don't know where I'm going.
Cut 'em off.
I'm also gonna reset the camera.
But do you guys think about like inflicting pain on yourself?
As pleasure?
Well, just
Wait, let's just hold on.
all right.
All right, you were saying...
Yeah, I was just talking
Pain.
about pain, because that's on the other side of the spectrum, right?
Yeah.
So, because sometimes you can use pain as a way of making life more pleasurable, if
Yes.
that makes sense. So sometimes what I would do is I would use training or cold showers or long meditations
Yeah.
to inflict some sort of pain on myself
Yeah.
in order to make other experiences more pleasurable.
Well, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that. I think that you can't really feel... Maybe this is a good way of looking at long-term pleasure versus short-term pleasure, and how one is actually disguised as pleasure. It's actually not. It's more painful in the long term. That
think that's
real
what I'm getting at,
pleasure,
yeah.
it can only come from having suffered in some level
Sure.
to achieve it.
Sure.
Which would include pain. Yeah, I take cold showers purely because it sucks. Because it's also like that moment of deciding to do it. And you're
Yeah,
like, "Ugh."
it's really powerful, right?
Yeah, it's like you're a fucking badass when you pull that thing to the other side and you just stand there.
And you tell people about it, right? I
Yeah,
took a
like
fucking
right
cold
now.
shower today. I do that in my office space sometimes. I did a cold shower today. What did you guys do?
But it's like you need those little moments of discipline to keep yourself in check a little bit as well. Like that's, to me, what I'm doing currently is taking the cold showers, because it's a moment of like choosing to do something, and I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah. I mean, we've been jumping in the ocean now.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
But I'm so conditioned almost. I was in Norway for a while, and I was doing it every day going to the thing. And I feel like I almost got used to the fact, even though it's painful, I knew the pleasure that would come right afterwards.
Is so
I start
good.
to get giddy before I start giggling like a little girl, and I get like all like weird and excited. Even though I know it's gonna suck as soon as you go in, but it's like as soon as you come out, it's like the best feeling ever.
Yeah.
Just tingles all over your body.
And I think like that's a little burst of intense pain over a short time. Something like going for a 3-hour run because you're training for a long distance race. You're not going to be giddy beforehand. You're not excited. You're fucking dreading it. But you still do it because the reward afterwards is like even more than the reward of the little bit of pain you feel from jumping. It's like it matches up. The more pain you feel when you're trying to achieve a goal, the better the feeling is once you get it.
I almost feel like anything that's worth it is like that. Like for me, it's, you know, we're doing this feature film at the moment, and it's been 2 years of work with very little reward from it. We're still finishing it. But I know the ultimate, with the day we're done and we send that thing to it's going to be like the best fucking thing ever. It's this 2-year goal that's finally going to come together. And I think I'm looking for more things like that. Although those things are very hard in the moment when you're 6 months in and you know you still got a year to go or something. That's very hard to keep the mindset going of like, why am I doing this? Why is this important? Even starting a company where I came from LA, where I was making a shit ton of money. It was great. It wasn't great. It was terrible, actually.
Money was good.
Right. The money was good. And then, you know, we started this company, and you got to build it from the bottom up. And obviously you don't get paid as much and everything. And that can be very painful at times. And in those times, it's like, you got to remind yourself, you know, why did I choose to quit my job in the first place and start this company? And sometimes I find it a little bit hard to remember those things. And then it can maybe help to go back in a notebook and read what you wrote back then, and, you know, those reasons. And you're like, oh yeah, that fucking sucked. That's why I was willing to go through that, you know?
Yeah. I kind of have that feeling right now with the whole baby thing. Like, I really feel it's dreadful and tiresome. But, you know, I also know that I'm helping a lot of people. And I'm doing a service to Denmark.
Right.
In some sort of way. At least I kind of feel like that. Because I'm making a product available that's not available in Denmark.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I feel like I'm changing. But I've been working on this for free, like for 1.5 years, almost. I pulled out 540 kroner from it just to do it, to say that I've made money off of it. Because it just felt so tiresome that I felt like I have to reward myself in some kind of way. I have to gratify myself in some kind of way, because it was getting so hard and tiresome.
Why did you want to do that in the first place? What motivated you to want to do that?
I think I feel like I have a big responsibility to make Denmark a better, greener, and more sustainable place. I feel this might sound a bit radical, but it's not. But I really love Denmark. I really love this country. Yeah. And, you know, when sometimes, it's crazy, like sometimes when I hear the national anthem, it almost makes me cry. And that's so fucked up. I don't know why I feel like that, but I really like this country.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's fucking interesting, because I know I don't feel like a fucking right-wing, radical, crazy, nationalistic kind of guy. I just really like this place, because I just feel so privileged living in Denmark and getting my studies paid for me, and getting SU and all that.
Have you lived here your whole life?
Yeah, I haven't experienced anything else. That might be the case. I have been doing quite a bit of traveling, but maybe I should travel some more. Maybe that's it. Maybe I should try to live somewhere else.
I don't even know if it's that. Yeah, I think it's like, for me, my parents are both Danish. I was born here, and I moved from here before I was 2 years old, so I don't have a memory of living here. And so I don't feel very Danish in that sense, because I went to international schools, American international schools even. Although my entire family is Danish, even just from like looking at, my Danish isn't that great. If I have to have like a business meeting in Danish, it's a very like stressful thing for me, because I don't know the like vocabulary. I've never been schooled in Danish. I can't really write it. I've learned to do it just from like, I can sound it out a little bit, but I guess I'm a little dyslexic even in English. So that's, so I feel very, international, I guess.
Sure.
So it's interesting to hear someone who feels very patriotic.
Yeah, and I don't. To be honest, I don't want to be a patriot. I don't want to be like super patriotic about the Danish government or the Danish way of living or anything like that. I'm just super thankful and super grateful to live in such a privileged place on earth, and I just want the best for Denmark, I guess.
Yeah,
for other people that lives here. So that's why I think that's why I do what I do, and also because And I also started the business because I wanted to challenge myself and try to do something that scares me.
Yeah.
But do it anyway. Try to throw myself out of that cliff and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Because, there's so many people that just go through their lives not really controlling anything by themselves. They just apply for a job and work at a job, and they kind of just do that instead of just trying to create their own life and do stuff for themselves. And, I just wanted to gain some experience from another part of the whole thing of running a business, like selling and importing and stuff like that.
For me, starting the business I didn't realize how much I would actually enjoy the business side of it. I wanted to have my own company so that I could work on things I was passionate about, and I never really thought about how much you would actually have to work on the business itself, not just being able to work on creative projects and make films. And so for me, I think it is part of the like joy of learning and challenging yourself that I've been really getting more and more passionate about. Like, how do you grow a business, and how do you like learn to market, and how do you learn like sales?
You never thought about giving up?
No.
With the business so far, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you would count, I think the closest thing to something like that would be just being aware of how difficult it is. But that never translates into I wish I could do something else.
Okay.
It always kind of switches into, that's good. It's motivating.
But this is the primary thing you do. You don't do anything else other than the burning boat business, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because that makes sense, because then you have so much invested in it, and you have like
it's everything.
It's everything for you guys.
Burning boat.
We have the ideas that were the idea.
Have you heard the term burning boat? So there was it Cortez?
Cortez or Columbus? Some
explorer.
What do you call it? I want to say conquistador, but I don't think that's right.
He came to conquer a new land, right?
Oh yeah.
With his ships and his men, and they all got off the ships and got onto the island. And in order to ensure success, he decided to burn all their ships. So there literally was no way of retreating off the island. So it was powerful. Die or conquer the thing that you want to achieve.
Yeah, really.
So we kind of risked everything and put everything into the business.
That is so cool.
It's sort of the idea that you should, I don't know if it works for everybody, but we really believe in it, that you shouldn't leave yourself a safety net necessarily.
No.
That if you're really trying to do something and saying, I want to start a business, but you hold on to one rope and you're like, but I'm still going to do freelance editing on the side, just in case something fucks up. I feel like if you don't commit fully, it's gonna show in your business. It's gonna.
I think you're right. I think you're totally right about that, because I run different businesses and I do freelance on the side as well. I have like so many side hustles, but it stems from having a goal back in a few years ago where I wanted to create a life for myself where I had different streams of income. So I've always been quite. I don't know how to say it, but I've always felt like I don't want to do the same thing all the time. That's also why I went into triathlon, because it's both swimming, running, and cycling.
Right.
And that's how I live my life. I just do different stuff.
Yeah.
And so I run the baby business, I run the podcast business.
I think it's really important, because one of the things that when I worked in Los Angeles that was the worst was doing the same thing every day. Even though I worked on slightly different projects here and there, I felt like I just had this overwhelming need that I need things to change up in my life. And I would get crazy where like every 6 months I'd suddenly want to move or like change a massive part of my life.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that was that my purpose in life was so like, you just go to work from 9 to 5. Every day it's the same thing. It's the same people. It's the same job basically every day. You go home, and in a way, I guess that just wasn't enough for me. And now with running a company, I mean, every fucking day you've got something new to do, and there's so much to explore within building a business, I think.
Okay. How old are you guys?
25.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great.
How old are you?
I'm 28. I just turned 28.
Nice.
And yeah, that sounds amazing. That sounds amazing. I don't know if my thing is right to do or your thing is right to do, but I can definitely feel that by running all of these different things, I might be half-assing some of it.
Well, I think we can see that. I mean, even, we're running Burning Boat, but even within that, you've got different branches of stuff.
That's
like
true.
We're doing feature-length films, which we're not getting paid for. And so to support ourselves, we do commercial work. We make promos and commercials. But then we also wanted to do a YouTube channel. And I mean, we do a podcast as well. And we can't do all of them.
No.
We just can't. I mean, we could, but one of them would be bad. And
what has been working out best for you guys?
Well, we chose to stop making YouTube videos because it was the only thing that we had to focus on the other two more.
Okay.
And it was the one that was showing the least returns at the moment, but I still see the potential for it in the future.
Yeah.
It's just something that I think we also had a standard that we wanted to keep and maintain that we just weren't able to put into it, and then we felt like we'd rather just not do it then and be able to do it properly maybe in the future, focus on the two other ones. But I mean, the business side, the commercial stuff has been what allows us to do everything else.
Okay.
I mean, that's where we make money. That's how we are able to do everything else we do.
I think it's financially the most successful, but I don't know if it's the most rewarding necessarily.
Okay.
No.
Although it's amazing. Like if I went back 2 years and told myself I'd be filming commercials and could live off of that, I would be so stoked. I think it's just when you get to that point, you want, you know what, actually what I want to do is feature films, which is a massive, it's such a lofty, it's like saying you want to be a rock star basically, right? Okay.
Well, within the industry, it's just, it's the fewest people are able to actually do that and be, you know, someone who writes and directs those films. It's something very few people get to do. There's so much work within video. I mean, that's such a broad term. But to be able to write films and make those into feature films, that's something that is very, it's just there's so much money that needs to be involved in creating stuff like that.
Someone has to be willing to trust you with $2 million.
Wow.
And that's still a low
budget
film.
That's called a micro budget film.
That's low budget.
What's micro?
Micro is like under 50,000.
Under 50?
Yeah.
So micro, which is the smallest thing you can do, is under $50,000, which to me sounds like a massive amount of money. And so the next step up is something like $2 million to make something that you know, if we watched it, we would be like, oh, that's like a very cheap film. Like it looks like they, you know, did the bare minimum. You know, it's all either shot in 1 or 2 locations with very few actors, and it's low budget. It's just something that requires so much money.
What out of all the things that you're doing right now, what do you see yourself doing in like 5 years?
That's a good question. I think I want to keep the podcast going because I feel like it has a whole lot of potential in growing and spreading a good message and distributing knowledge to people. Yeah. And I feel that like that's a very important role to have and to give. And I feel like I've reached a point where I don't have to reach out to people. Like people come to me and I just pick and choose. And that's a really privileged place to be. And also, just continue with that. Maybe, I don't know, I've also been thinking about maybe starting or continuing on the YouTube channel and work more on that, like work more on the creative side.
What were you doing on the YouTube channel?
I made this channel called Casper Kulhydrat, where I
carbohydrate.
Yeah, Casper Carbohydrate, where I just share like a healthy vegan lifestyle, I guess. Just share my adventures and trips. One thing
like vlog style stuff.
Yeah, vlog style stuff. But also, I've been thinking a lot about a project. I think, and to be honest, I don't know what I will be doing in 5 years because I also just applied for the university to get a master's degree. Okay. But one thing I know for certain that I will do in the next 5 years is that I want to do some long cycling trips. I want to take my bicycle and ride around the whole Baltic Sea. That's something I've been thinking a lot about. Maybe I'll do it next summer. I don't know.
Wow.
That's something I want to do.
How far is that?
I think it's 4,000 kilometers or something like that.
How long would that take?
A month.
A month.
Maybe 1.5 months, 2 months, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how long I stay
Would you
in
like
the big
camp
city.
along the way or stay at places?
I think I'll just bring a tent.
Yeah.
The good thing about like riding in Sweden, for example, is that you can just camp anywhere.
Yeah. I was just in Sweden on the, do you know the Kungsleden?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't complete it. I hurt my knee.
That's a long one, isn't it?
It's like 420 kilometers.
That's long. If you hike it, that's long.
Yeah,
as
it takes
fuck.
about
A month.
no, less than that.
Sorry, 25 days.
20 something days. Some people do it in fucking, I saw one couple and they were like, we're doing it in 9 days.
Whoa.
She like, the girl sat down and he's like, we gotta go, eat a Snickers, we gotta go.
That's a marathon
I
a
was like,
day.
that's a fucking trek.
I saw a
it's
video of a
crazy.
girl doing it in 4 days.
Whoa.
She runs the whole thing.
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
She does like an ultra marathon every day.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Every day?
Yeah. She did it in 4 days.
Oh.
But that was something, that's the time where I was off my phone for like 3 weeks on that trip.
Yeah, it feels great, right?
I've never felt better at the end. You know, at the end of it, I was so like, I don't even know how to explain it.
You're so calm, right?
Yeah. It
Super
makes
calm.
you want to go back and just like, I'm never going to use my phone again.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then there's that problem. You start using it again and you get back into it and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's what I'm trying to figure out now. You know, what can you do? So when I watched you and I saw that the grayscaling, I was like, that's an interesting idea. Turning off notifications, obviously.
Yeah.
Maybe switching to a flip phone. Like, I have no idea.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I just feel like going on these trips, that's what my heart tells me to do at the moment. Just go out and explore and see what you can do with your body. So yeah, what I did this year was I took a bike trip from Copenhagen to Amsterdam in 3 days. That's like 870 kilometers. So, and that just felt so good.
Mm-hmm.
Just seeing the landscape and the people and the houses change, riding through cultures in 1 day. So what I did the first day was back in April in the Easter holiday. I went from Copenhagen to Hamburg in Germany.
Yeah.
That was 330 kilometers on bike.
In a day?
Yeah, I did that in 12 hours.
Fuck.
And then I...
How many kilometers is the triathlon?
Wait, say, how many kilometers was that?
330.
You did it in 12 hours.
Well, I was active in 12 hours, but it took me 14 and a half hours from start to finish. But yeah, 12 hours on the bike to get to Hamburg.
Have you run an Ironman?
No, only a half Ironman.
Okay.
But that's...
Are you thinking of doing an Ironman?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about it, but I'm like, nah.
Why not?
Well, because I hate swimming.
Me too.
I can.
Oh my god, it's the worst.
I can swim, and I can enjoy swimming.
No.
But like to the extent of making an Ironman and swimming those 4 kilometers and riding those 180 kilometers and running a marathon and just all the training that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's so tiresome that I'm not willing to put in the effort in order to do the Ironman.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to do a very long cycling trip,
Right.
where I only compete against myself and where I'm immersed in nature and where it's not about like exerting yourself or accomplishing a goal, but more like just exploring. And that's what I really liked about that Easter trip that I did, and that really inspired me to go further and longer because, you know, our bodies are just amazing. We can just go for so long.
I've always wanted secretly to get into a really terrible situation where I don't know, like if you're stranded somewhere, like what could you really do to get out? I want to see what I'd be capable of. That's
also one of the things going into these thoughts about doing this kind of stuff, because if the apocalypse arrives, if we
I can bike 800 kilometers.
If we come to live in this post-apocalyptic world, I know how to survive and get the fuck out of here without using standard modes of transportation. I can just get on my fucking
good.
bike and ride to Norway or whatever.
That's what we should call this episode.
Yeah.
When the apocalypse happens.
Yeah, I've really been thinking a lot about that because there are some in the vegan movement that are just awaiting for this big catastrophe.
Oh no.
Like this big climate catastrophe to happen.
Yeah.
And they're prepping. They're seriously prepping. Like there's fucking vegans out there prepping.
Yeah, I think in America there's a lot of preppers as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you a prepper?
Well, in the sense of working on these exploration trips, I might be.
Okay.
But it's not something that occupies my day-to-day
Okay.
thought process. Not at all.
All right. Good.
Maybe I think about it once a month or something like that. But I know people that think about this every day.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
It's not crazy. Something like I was in Los Angeles, and there, a lot of people fear a big earthquake, which is something that is going to happen at some point in Los Angeles, right? So there, it doesn't seem that crazy. I mean, you assume it's never going to happen, but then you think about it, and you're like, okay, earthquake hit, I wouldn't have water anymore, I wouldn't have electricity. Like, you'd be fucked in 2 days.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we've got this massive solar powered battery.
Just bring out the battery.
Right here.
Wow.
We shot
cool.
a movie kind of off the grid
Yeah.
where we needed to charge like a lot of equipment for a week.
Wow.
And so we invested in one of these.
Wow.
I always look at this and I'm like,
You'd survive.
if shit went down, we would have electricity for a while.
But can you put it on your bag and run with it?
No.
No.
I can put it in my Christiania bike
Oh yeah, that's true.
and I could create this little
We just have to
moving
charge
fort.
it for 48 hours in the sun.
Yeah, that's true.
That's clever. That's
Yeah.
very clever. But yeah, I think it's healthy to just think about the apocalypse just like a few times a year
Yeah.
because it kind of sets an intention, or it kind of sets a and also think about death, for example, knowing that this life is finite, knowing that everything's gonna end at some point.
Yeah.
You don't know when, so why not get the fucking most out of this time we have here?
So how do you go about thinking about that on a regular basis?
Thinking about death.
Yeah.
Well, I think about death actually quite often, like every other day, I guess.
Just like it pops up.
Yeah. I think about, well, maybe because I ride my bike in traffic all the time. I'm like, well, actually, if I were a few centimeters to the left, I could be splattered out on the concrete. And I think that's a healthy thought to a certain extent.
It depends on how you choose to think about it afterwards, right?
Yeah, that's true. But I think death is inevitable. Of course it is. We don't have the technology to get there yet, but I think it should be a very, very important part of how we live our lives and how we think about our lives. Because you're going to get fucking old and wrinkled, and at some point you're not going to be able to walk anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, same for me. And it really inspires me to make the most out of the time I have and make the most difference for the humanity and for myself. And
It's interesting because it can almost go one of two ways, right? It can motivate you, or it can be like, well, nothing fucking matters. I'm
Yeah,
going to
that's
die
true.
anyways.
Or
Yeah.
it can scare you so much that you're paralyzed.
Yeah.
So I have a younger brother who thinks about death quite often and has quite severe anxiety, and will have anxiety attacks that are triggered specifically by little thoughts like you just mentioned,
okay.
where he will imagine dying, and it'll spiral into this very intense thought that he gets a full-on can get a full-on panic attack from.
Really?
And it's something that he, in that sense, it's not an inspiring thing for him. But I think there's a way to use the same fear almost to spin it into well, I should fucking do something today that has impact and that makes me happy.
But have you guys ever experienced anything close to death, close to dying?
I say I've had like one or two near-death experience.
What?
Just random. One of them was on a high school end-of-year party that was in California at the top of this mountain, basically. And I was driving in a car with a couple friends, and we were driving in the car, and at one point the car drove over a rock, kind of a big bump. We looked outside. There was like a bubble that was coming out of the tire. And everybody was like, it's fine. We'll still make it to the top. We'll just keep going, right? And in your head, you're like, And it's a very steep, there's a road and then it's a very steep side thing. And we kept driving, and it was also already starting, you know, people smoking weed in the car and everything, and you just start to get this bad feeling of like, this could not end well. And then the tire popped at one point. He slides off the street, and just in that one part of the street there was a divot and like one last little thing there.
Oh.
Right? That if you had just gone, maybe the car wouldn't have rolled over all the way, even if it wasn't there. Maybe it would have. And everybody just had this moment of like looking at it, looking at the car, seeing what had happened, taking it in, and like, fuck, we could have all just tumbled down this hill to certain death.
Whoa.
And it gives you this very bizarre perspective all of a sudden, right?
How did that affect you and your friends in that car?
Honestly, I think I was too immature. You know, it's like in a moment it felt pretty powerful, but then it's like, okay, you go on and do the next thing.
Okay.
But I think it does show you how quickly something, you know, life is not something to be taken for granted. It can, like you said, I think about that on the bike sometimes as well. You know, one car that I think is going to stop for me but doesn't, and just plows into me, and I just fall the wrong way because I'm stupid and don't wear a helmet, and that's it. You know, but I think for me it's like, that's why you should risk things in life. That's why you should live your life to the fullest. And I think on another hand, death also makes me, in a weird way, when I get anxiety and think, oh fuck, things aren't going the way I want them to, or this is too overwhelming. A lot of times I thought it while I was making my feature film. It was such an overwhelming experience. So many people involved. My ego's involved to trying to make something good, all this stuff. But I was like, at the end of the day, there was this weird comfort of like, well, if it gets so fucking bad, everything, you just freaking kill yourself or something, and it'll be, you know, and in a weird way, I would never do it. But this weird sense of like, it doesn't really matter. We think life matters so much. We think every little, oh, I talked to this girl and she rejected me, it's the biggest deal ever. But it actually, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't fucking matter at all, because people from 2 generations ago, nobody remembers them. And they felt their lives were just as important as everybody else. In 3 generations, I'm lucky if 2 people will remember me from my family. I never think about my great-grandparents even. Right?
It might just be the ideas of like your ego, or what your ego has attached to it.
Yeah, right.
That might die from you not succeeding with the feature film.
Yeah, right.
You not getting the girlfriend or getting the promotion or whatever, right?
Right.
That can feel like dying for some people.
Well, it's a kind of death. It's a death of character a little bit.
Yeah.
Have you had a near-death experience?
Well, yeah, actually, I had a near drowning experience when I was 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. I remember that quite clearly, and I remember I was quite mad because of that happened.
Mad at who, or at the situation?
We were at this water slide in a place called Fårup Sommerland, which is a theme park, amusement park located in Jutland. It's like this big fucking water park, and I was getting on the biggest fucking slide together with my uncle's wife.
Yeah.
And we were going on the slide, and I was just going so much faster than her down the slide. I couldn't swim, so I just went to the bottom of the slide and went into the deep water, and I just couldn't swim. So I was just like struggling to get breath. And while I was in the water, I was just thinking, where was she? Why didn't she hold on to me? Why wasn't she there? And why isn't she coming to pick me up? Why is she still up in the slide?
Yeah.
But of course, she picked me up eventually, and I got out of the water. But that kind of gave me some sort of distrust in, you know, people being responsible for me. And so I think that was kind of my first near-death experience. I wasn't sure if I was going to die, but it really felt like a near-death experience. Maybe I would just kind of get some water in my lungs and be revived or whatever. But it felt like that. And I don't know if I've been crashed into by cars 3 times in the traffic. Yeah, one time was pretty bad. I thought I would lose my leg, but that wasn't like a near-death experience. It was just like a traumatic, invalidating experience, like getting my fucking knee blown up, like getting my kneecap torn off. That was kind of a crazy things to experience. But I wouldn't call that a near-death experience. It was just quite, it wasn't that pleasant.
Yeah, cars scare me a lot.
Yeah,
Actually.
I hate cars.
In
Fucking hate
LA,
cars.
it's the thing. I would drive on a road, and I couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, it just takes one person. You know, you're driving 60 miles per hour, 60 miles per hour. If you hit head on, it's 120.
Yeah.
There's 500 cars that come past you every fucking 30 minutes or whatever. It just takes one person to accidentally turn a little bit for something horrible to happen.
I'm just waiting for the technology to get to a place where we have like automated cars.
I'm fully with that too. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have a driver's license.
Me neither.
And part of me is like, I'm just gonna wait until I don't have to drive.
I think it's coming
pretty
soon.
Crazy. Like, cars are a pretty crazy thing.
Yeah.
I mean, especially living in the city, you don't need a car.
You don't
I mean,
need
there
a
are
car.
definitely situations where it would be great to have a car, but
You don't need it. You can take a bus or a train.
It's not necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's more for us and the amount of gear that we sometimes have to carry around.
Oh yeah, that's true.
But
you have a Christian bike, right?
Yeah, we do, but it starts to get a little like we have a lot of clients in Gentofte for some reason.
You should get a electrified, motorized.
Yeah, that's like twice the price.
Yeah.
But
they're
that's
too expensive.
Still cheaper than a car, right?
Oh,
It's
for
still,
sure. That's
still
true.
cheaper than
Definitely,
getting a driver's
definitely more.
license.
And it's also more fun
Yeah.
to ride a bike than it is to ride in a car.
Oh my God, cars. I had one in New York as well when we shot my film, and it's just such a stressful thing to have in a city, a car, like fucking figuring out where to park, freaking parking tickets.
That's the
Having
crazy
to-
thing about that's really what I hate about cars is they take up so much space in the city. Most cars you see driving around, 95% of the time, they're just taking up space in the city. They're just standing there.
Right.
Nobody's getting anything out of it. It's just there taking up space. There's so many cars just taking up space in the city. If we could just have automated cars that were riding around with people 99% of the time, so instead of them just being parked, they could just ride other people around, we would free up so much space in the city in order to walk around with our friends and kids and make parks and plant trees. And yeah, I have a really hard time with cars. I wrote this big project on uni, and all of these things that I'm telling you about occurred to me through my study in the literature, and I just got so frustrated. And I was like, it's just crazy how these cars are just so forceful in the way we construct our cities and construct the roads and make everything around us.
I think there's a few cities that have implemented car bans, right?
Are there?
I think so.
Huh?
Yeah. Makes sense. Certain, like, once it gets so populated, cars just become like New York. I always thought it was insane that people had cars.
Yeah.
It's literally faster to walk than to fucking have a car. Not exactly, but it's definitely faster to take the subway than to have a car. So a car is only a comfort thing.
Yeah.
And then like the stress of having to drive around in traffic and everything.
Yeah.
Like, why the fuck would anybody want to drive?
Yeah. But yeah, that was my near-death experiences, like the fucking cars. But I don't know how that changed me.
I don't think I would have like what you said, like a specific, that I almost died there. I think I've had more of like an abstract sense of this could kill me, being the alcohol.
Really?
Not from like drinking too much that it would kill me on the spot, but that it would, I'd get blackout drunk and just not be in control of my body and not know what's going on, and something to happen in those situations. And there's definitely a few situations that I look back on and I'm like, you could have totally died that night.
Like getting blackouts from drinking.
Yeah.
Super scary. I think it's really scary that we have a drug like you can just go down and buy.
Yeah.
It can make you fucking black out.
I mean, it is crazy. It's such a dangerous substance, and it's so socially accepted.
Yeah.
To the point that you're almost encouraged in certain cultures to do that.
And we create these narratives and stories about, you were so blackout drunk, you did.
It's almost like a good thing.
Yeah.
To some people, it's like a point of pride, especially in the UK. There's such a massive drinking culture.
Yeah. But also in Denmark, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, also in Denmark. That yeah, if you're not taught about what it is at the right time, you can really get off on the wrong foot, I think. And I don't think it's necessarily bad for everyone, but I think it is something that is so available in a bad way. I think there should be more of a... I think people should be held more accountable for shit they do when they're drunk than like, oh, I was drunk and that's like an excuse. I think there should be a little bit more...
That's right.
...shame involved in things like that. It's not cool.
That's what I see now when I've gotten older and stopped drinking. We kind of accept as a society that we have like drunken teenagers and kids around, just running around doing super stupid stuff.
Even adults.
We just, even adults, and we just fully accept it.
Yeah. It's like, oh, well, I was drunk. And, oh, okay. So you chose to get drunk. You know, I think that's something that can change a little bit. So yeah, I look at those times in my life and I think, holy fuck, like I could have really, something really bad could have totally happened.
Okay.
And it's been, I use it as a near-death experience, and like I even remember very clearly having been sober for a while and choosing to sit down and write what my funeral would be like if I were to die.
Really? You did that?
And imagine vividly everyone who would be there, what they would be thinking, what they would be talking about, how would they feel, how would I be remembered, what was the thing I did on the last day, and like just imagining it so vividly that I was like, well, okay, now I need to live every single day in a way that can allow me to be remembered the way I want to be remembered, and not die in a way where people would be like, well, what a waste, or something.
So people can say nice things about you at your funeral?
No, I feel like more so that it would be something where people look at my life and look at it in a way that makes them happy.
Okay.
So that they would also... I sometimes imagine, like, if I got cancer, for example, I would want the people around me to feel a sense of being inspired by the way that I handled it, for example. That it wouldn't be this terrible thing that would just devastate everyone, that it would be some way of motivating other people to really live their life to the fullest, and that if I died, my funeral would be about that, not about being like, oh, Matt's such a great person, but like for all I can see, it looks like he really did what he wanted to do with his life. And it's sad that he died, but at least he was doing what he wanted to do while he was alive. And that's a weird thing to sit down and, like, sometimes when I say that, people are like, oh, that's a little weird to do. But I
think it makes total sense.
It's an interesting exercise.
Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about like what people would say to me and what my legacy should be. That's what I really use to fuel my work, to think about like, what do I leave behind me? Yeah. When I'm gone, what's back for my kids, my family, exactly, people who know me? What can they go back and use that I've been making? That's really something I really try to use as a motivator.
I think it's very human nature, because it's, in a way, you're in that sense surviving death a little bit, because your memory is still alive.
For sure.
And so it's something that's, in a way, the ultimate motivator.
Invisibility through the work you do now.
I don't quite get that.
No, not invisibility. What does it call when you can't die?
Invincibility.
Invincibility.
I was like, invisible.
Sorry. No. Invincibility. That's the word. Sorry for my Danglish here.
No worries.
Or immortality.
Immortality. Yeah, that's the one.
Well, you live on through the people who know you.
Yeah.
And the way you live on through them is up to you, I'd say. Right? So if you are a shitty person and you die, you will be a shitty memory to the people who loved you.
Sure.
And I think that is it's your responsibility not to do that.
But on the other hand, people still remember you. It's because I just came to think of this crazy thing about, we have this historical magazine in Denmark called, I think it's called History, and it's
Great
so funny.
name.
Every time they put Hitler on the front page,
Yeah.
they sell more.
Right.
So their sales kind of depend on
Hitler,
how much they
this
put
week or not.
on the front page.
We got anything new on Hitler?
So which made me think about, you can be a fucking asshole, you can be a big fucking jerk and kill so many people, but your legacy can still live on. To, I don't know if that's inspiring to people, but you're still leaving a legacy, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Some
definitely it is to some people.
I would
Yeah.
say the
But I'd
biggest,
say they're-
the most people we know are probably jerks.
That's actually an interesting question.
Yeah.
Are there more people who are infamous in a negative way? Well, doesn't infamous imply negativity? Rather than people who are remembered as inspirational
Yeah,
people?
I think maybe it's 50-50.
Yeah,
I don't know.
actually, I was not thinking. We do. I mean, heroes, obviously.
Yeah, like Gandhi and
Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah, Jesus is like the top dog, right?
Santa
dog.
Claus. Oh, wait, no.
It's like the most virtuous life lived, right? That was Jesus. He died for our sins.
Are you religious?
No,
Okay.
not at all.
So, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about then.
Have you guys ever had like a super strong psychedelic experience?
A couple.
Like feeling like dying, maybe?
Feeling
I feel like I've had natural
dying.
experiences.
How come?
Like through really hard training,
Really?
gotten to a point of like just being like suddenly I'm accessing something really different
Wow.
and coming out of it with like a lasting impact on me.
Wow.
So that's another reason why I want to do really hard physical challenges, is because I feel like that is a way to get those kinds of experiences.
That's true.
Naturally.
Yeah, that's true.
Like if you keep, like, you know, the feeling if you've run a marathon when you hit the like 32-kilometer mark
Yeah, you get the tingles, right?
and it just starts to hurt so bad,
Yeah, sure.
and you keep going and it just doesn't stop. Your brain has to figure out a way to stop thinking about it.
Yeah.
And it goes some very interesting places.
I get the tingles. I get like, it's like when I reach those 32 kilometers, or when I'm in a half marathon and really giving it my everything,
Yeah.
I hit it around 16 or 17 kilometers. It's like my nervous system starts firing. And I get this the sense of electricity up my spine and shattering all over my skull. And
Right, well, that sounds like a psychedelic experience, kind of.
well, it's not psychedelic in a sense that, well, the sense of in my body might kind of be a bit euphoric, psychedelic, but my senses aren't really affected because I'm still performing and I have a very sharp focus.
Right. Yeah.
So it's not psychedelic in that sense, but it has some components of it.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't had any actual psychedelic experiences, so I wouldn't know what to compare it to, but I feel like the way my brain is thinking sounds similar to what I've heard other people say when they talk about stuff like that.
Okay.
But I'm very interested in psychedelics at the moment. So I'm reading about LSD and psilocybin and the health benefit, not the way you can use those drugs to treat
Anxiety,
PTSD.
Yeah, sure.
And I find it absolutely fucking amazing.
Yeah, it's super amazing.
The science is so solid from what I've read that it's just mind-blowing to me. And it like in a similar way to when I came across veganism and like, oh, why isn't this common knowledge? I felt the same kind of feeling about psychedelics and how it has such a taboo attached to it. I'm like, what about all these amazing things that are happening through these drugs? How they're non-addictive, how they're treating people with higher rates of success than anything else that exists. Yeah, I find that pretty intriguing. I know you have.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah, because the reason why I'm asking is because they can also kind of induce some sort of death-related experiences.
Yeah.
And I had one of those, I think it was 1.5 years ago. I was pretty lightweight, and I was doing it together with a friend. He was quite heavier than me at the moment. We took the same dose, and we were like, we're gonna do the strong dose. We're gonna do a strong dose. I think we took like 3 or 4 grams of dried mushrooms, and I was lightweight. I was weighing like 63 kilos at that moment. I was running so much, and I was just skinny as fuck.
Yeah.
And my friend, he was weighing like 75 or something like that. We took the same dose, and it was strong for him, and it was really strong for me. So, yeah, coming up in the trip was kind of weird, but also very powerful. It was like I could see different. It's, as you know, it's really, really hard to explain psychedelic experiences. But
that's
what
why I'm like, I gotta try it, because
what I
can't.
What I can't explain about it is that coming up, I started to see how different families and relations of humans and different, I'm saying it in exclamation marks, races of humans kind of develop and have different traits. I could really see that clearly. So I saw these family trees of different branches of human history. I could really see that clearly. And then I saw a lot of different visions of energies, and it's kind of hard to explain, but it came to a point where it became so powerful that it was too much.
It became a bad trip.
It started not really bad, but it was just too intense. So I went into my bed and laid in my bed, and from there, everything's just gone. But what I remember taking back from that, or what I remember having in that experience, is I was in another world. Like, I was in a totally different world, which was just filled with fractals that were just ever continuing, developing spirals of fractals that were just life, and the way life was expressed in these patterns. It's very hard to explain, but I was just in a different place that felt quite divine and had this fractal nature to it. So, and when I came back from that, my whole conception of reality came back in bricks, like a puzzle. So the first thing that came back was space. Whoa, I'm in a space. I'm in something tangible, world. Physical. I can touch things. This exists. Then what came back was time. Whoa, okay. So there's a relationship between movement and space and how things are. But what I realized when that piece of the puzzle came back to me was that time is a construction. That's only a thing we construct in our minds. And space was also a construction. And then after time came back to me, then the language came back to me. I could start making sense of things through my language. But that's also a construction. So what I realized coming back from this divine space was that space, time, and language are the modes which we conceptualize our world with, but they are constructions. We make them. We construct them out of our minds. That was a really, really weird experience. And then after the language, then certain concepts came back to me, like living in a house and existing as a human being and habits and all that. So it all came back to me like in different, and then the pieces of the puzzle came back to me faster and faster. It's a very, very, very weird experience.
To me, that's the most fascinating part of what I've heard and read about psychedelic experiences, is that you're not going into it and coming out with a new piece of information. You're coming out with a new perspective about things that you already know, which is, I mean, it's basically what any powerful experience is you're gaining a new perspective on it, which is why I feel like I can relate it to experiences of changed perceptions I've had while running, for example, where it's like, I know that I love my family and I love my son, or I love my girlfriend, but then you come out of it and you're like, but now I really like get it, or I really feel it. I feel like the perspective has changed.
Yeah.
Well, you'll hear of people who want to quit smoking, for example, and they use psychedelics as a form of treatment, and they know that it's unhealthy, and they know that it does this and this and this, but then after the psychedelic experience, they really feel it, and they're like, oh my God, there's so many things to experience in life, and I went on this trip where I was flying across the world and experiencing all these different places, and like I want to be there and feel it in a healthy body, and now I want to quit because I know that. But it's not that you know something new, you just have a different perspective of it.
Well, sometimes when I've been
Change the camera.
tripping, should I stop?
It's still going, so you can go
Okay.
ahead.
Well, sometimes when I'm tripping, I just see myself and see my experiences and see the things that I've done in relation to how I would have handled the situations. It's really, it can really be tough, a really tough experience. That's all. I always see it. I always see my actions and how I should be behaving in that situation, or how I've been reacting as a trauma or as a bad habit, and how that has been formed and why I've been walking down that road.
Yeah.
And that's led me to better myself and see these bad habits or traits or traumas clearly in order to better them and do something different or better for myself and the people around me.
I think it lets you take a step back. I always like the analogy of, I think David Foster Wallace said it or something. It's a joke where one fish asks another fish, how's the water today? And the other fish goes, what is water? And that idea that you could be in something and not be aware of the thing that is surrounding you and the things that are influencing you. I think the same way with psychedelics, where the thing you trust the most, your senses, your objective reality, once that gets changed for you once, and you see something as, it's like a dream, I guess, as well. You see something as real, you start to question, obviously, when you come back to a sober state of mind, you start to question, well, what is reality in a sense, if it can be so easily manipulated in a way, you know? And I think in the same way, that sort of perspective can, in a way, help you, like you said, see things about yourself, see things about... Joe Rogan always says it feels like deleting all the files off your computer and putting them in one folder and kind of giving you this new... It's interesting that you use the word building blocks, like building things up again, right?
Sure.
And giving you just a new perspective on things, which is very... It ties back to the idea of a near-death experience, I think, which is the same thing. As soon as you have that, there's this new... Although I kind of underplayed it, saying, it wasn't that big of a deal, there definitely is a sense of like, oh shit, we're alive, totally. We're in a car.
I was so happy when I came back, because I had this anxious sense when I kind of got the pieces of the puzzle back, but I sensed that when I was coming down there was still some pieces missing, and I was like, oh fuck, the pieces are never coming back. I'm gonna be fucking psychotic for the rest of my life. And I started getting super anxious. But eventually, of course, they came back and everything fell into the same place, kinda. But yeah, since then, I felt like that whole experience felt like just a big fucking kick in the stomach, like, or a big kick to the nuts or something like that. It felt like it was almost too much information, too much insight to what I should handle. And what I got out from that experience, that very powerful experience, was that when I went into the divine place or the divine state, where I saw the nature of life as a fractal, I knew that when I was sane again, that I need to meditate more in order to be able to get back more information when I go back to the divine place. I know that sounds very strange, but I got a very powerful sense when I came back that I need to meditate a lot more.
How often do you
meditate? There's definitely ties. I mean, I think a lot of people say they can hallucinate from meditation.
Yeah, and I've been meditating like quite regularly ever since. I've went to courses and stuff like that, and it's been really good for my life. It's kind of weird. It's really, really, really a powerful practice if you do it like consistently every day. I do like a few times a week. I would, and I think I will eventually do like a challenge, as you always mention, like maybe in December, do it like every day, rigorously, because it's like rigorously because it's just such a powerful tool.
I'm reading a book. I keep saying I'm reading a book. I started reading a book. I'm currently taking a break from it, called Throwing Ashes on the Buddha, I believe it's called. And it might not actually be that book. Somewhere I've read that they did a study on Buddhist monks and people under the influence of psychedelics, and that Buddhist monks are able to get to the same state that people under the influence of psychedelics are able to get to after a certain amount of time. And the more elite they are as monks, the quicker they can get there. So I don't know exactly how they measure that, but looking at brainwaves and the speed at which they're processing things, or actually I think everything slows down, there's a very, very clear correlation between those two states of mind.
I heard that study being spoken of during this meditation course I was on. It was something about like doing brain scans and seeing different parts of the brain lighting up. And then when you have like this brain scan and you put people on psychedelics, the whole fucking brain lights up. And the same thing is what these monks you talk about can do. Just as a snap of the fingers, they can just turn the whole brain on.
Yeah, fuck.
Do you think you fear death?
I think that's an ongoing process. I think I do fear death, but in some sense I don't. And I think that's the dance that I'm always on when I'm riding my bike through the traffic and seeing myself laying splattered on the concrete, like and just accepting that, trying to accept that and say, okay, well, that could be me.
Yeah, I think for me it's sometimes the context of how I die. I find there's some context I'm like, I'm genuinely okay with that. And I've had dreams where I'm in a situation where I'm about to die and I'm very calm in that moment. And I say, okay, this is okay. This is going to happen.
But what would be the most preferable way to die for you? That
it was somehow, I think the opposite of that, the way I wouldn't want to die is doing something like we at one point wanted to go on a lot of mountaineering trips together. And I realized that it was really his goal to climb mountains. And that I wanted to help him do that and wanted to be part of it, but it wasn't really my goal. And then I imagined myself if an avalanche hit or something, right? Obviously there are risks involved when you do that. And I imagined the situation where if I died from an avalanche, I would be pretty pissed all of a sudden about dying because it wasn't actually something I wanted to do. I was kind of just going along with someone and doing something, and because of that, I've died now. That to me would feel like a waste, as opposed to if it's something I'm personally passionate about and I'm making the decision, and it happens, then it suddenly feels very different to me, obviously. Right.
I'm selfishly afraid of other people dying that I care about. So that's a very scary thought to me. People I love dying.
I think that's pretty natural.
And I think I can connect with the thought of what they would feel if I died too. If that makes sense. Like the thought of them being upset that I'm gone, that scares me too.
I can't even imagine. I've honestly never had someone very close to me die.
I had my dad die.
Wow.
Yeah, and actually to go all the way back to the first question that you asked, because I was influenced, as I said, by all these YouTube guys that were not masturbating and eating all vegan, and I was very inspired by that. But what really made me take action and do something about it was that my father died. So he died, he was just riding his bike. I think that's quite an awesome way to die. Just go out and ride your bike and do training and then just fall over and die. I think that's a pretty desirable way to die.
Why?
Because he loved cycling.
I see.
Yeah.
And you're doing something.
Yeah, and you're doing something that just makes sense to you. But before that, I was kind of half-assing these kind of virtues that I wanted to develop. But after he died, I kind of realized, whoa, okay, life is short. If he can die like with not a notice at all, I might die as well without a notice.
Right.
So I just stopped giving fucks about what people thought of me and stopped giving fucks about my own bad habits and just started fucking hammering on it.
Yeah.
So that was a very significant thing. So losing someone close to you that you love, it's a very, very unpleasant experience. It's so much pain. but it also learned me a lot and has empowered my life in a lot of good ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a coin with two sides.
Right.
So I think the key would be to be able to feel those realizations without something terrible happening.
Sure.
I think that's why something like psychedelics or like
Sure.
accessing different states of consciousness through working out or climbing mountains or filming movies because that's what you love. Those are very exciting things because there's so much you can learn.
But would you guys be happy with dying while filming a movie?
We've talked about that. It's a hard question to answer because it's not. It's
I don't
not
think
true.
Yeah,
There's no
it's
danger
a
in
weird. It's
filming.
like basically you'd have to be willing to not make films to avoid dying. Like, say there's a risk involved with making films, right? You'd have to be willing to not do the thing you love in order to avoid it. And I think that's the thing I wouldn't be able to accept. I wouldn't choose to not do something I love because of a risk. I mean, obviously, there's something as extreme as climbing this most dangerous mountains in the world where your risk of dying skyrockets.
Sure.
I think then you can start to look at the risks and calculate, is it worth the joy I'm getting? Is there another way I can get this joy? But I think if you're to say that you would regret doing what you love because you happen to die while doing it in an accident, that doesn't really, like, in the moment, yeah, it would suck, but like you'd have to then be willing to say I would never do it, and I don't think I'd be willing to do
No,
that.
makes sense.
Yeah. And it would depend. If it was like, filmmaking is this hugely dangerous thing, I would say, is there another thing I could do that gives me the same purpose in life? And if not, I think I would do it because it is like your purpose in life obviously is,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of power in like going towards your biggest fears. It might be your fear of dying.
Yeah.
Because I think our biggest dreams, they might be in some way interconnected with the fear of dying or the fear of losing or fear of, something like that. I think a lot of people, they don't chase their dreams because they're afraid of dying.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah.
It's like that's a no-go almost. It's like that's you're dying in another way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna die anyways.
Yeah.
You can die from doing something you don't love,
Sure.
like randomly in an accident.
Yeah. I think that's why people are so stressed. Like we have like a stress epidemia in our society. That's just because people aren't loving what they do. Might be. I might be wrong, but it might be
It's like
one
if
of
you-
the pieces of the puzzle, right?
If you love what you do, think about the amount of things that you would accept that would in other situations be looked at as very painful experiences that you would want to avoid at all costs, like not being paid for what you do, or hurting yourself physically by doing it. If you're at a job that you don't love, suddenly things like getting fired or not getting paid what you thought you would get paid, or having a horrible colleague or something, those things become very painful to you because it's like you don't even love what you do. You might not even like it, and you're having to deal with these shitty things. If you love what you do and that's like your foundation, then it's like everything else you can kind of figure out and deal with because it's worth it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Makes
It's like
total sense.
Jim Carrey has this documentary called Jim and Andy.
Jim and Andy.
I haven't seen that.
You got to watch
Oh.
it.
Oh yeah?
And he kind of talks in it. It's worse to it's worse to fail at something when you already compromised. So if you decided not to pursue your dream and you become an accountant, not that that's a bad thing, but let's say that's not what you wanted to do, and then you fail at that, that is the worst thing that could happen to you. You didn't even try. You were trying to take the safe route and you failed. So that possibility is always there, obviously. Sure. So you might as well, in my opinion, go for the thing that you really want to do, because either option has failure in it, right? This idea of there being something safer out there, I don't necessarily know how true it is, because even in Los Angeles, I had a good job, but I could have been fired. Company could have gone down, something could have happened. The same shit can happen.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel more and more that
What
this
is a safe
idea of
job?
security is also a construction. That it's like, yeah, something could happen to your
Yeah.
business and you would lose your job in the same way that at least we're in control
Yeah.
of what we do. And that if something doesn't work, it's completely up to us to figure something else out. We're 100% responsible for what ends up happening. We're not at the mercy of someone else
Right.
who didn't do what we wanted them to do. We can't be angry at anyone else. We can only look at what we did wrong and try and change it. I feel like there's almost more secure, at least for me, I feel more secure about that because I know myself and I know that I would do everything in my power to figure out a solution. And at every point in my life so far, a solution has presented itself at some point. And you just gotta like keep going and you'll find it. To me, it's a very comfortable feeling, even though in the surface it feels like discomfort. If that makes sense.
Makes total sense. Very powerful.
Maybe back to the funeral as well. It's like at the end of your life, you know, it's a very cliche thing to say, but do you look back and do you regret something? Is there something that you said, I should have just fucking...
That's the ultimate
I was 20
fear,
years
right?
old. Why didn't I go and
the
do
ultimate
this
fear.
you know?
You're about to die. You know you're going to die in the next day or two because you're ill.
You're regretting all the shit that
You
you
regret
didn't do.
something big.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's the thing, right? That's what death can give you. If you knew you were going to die tomorrow, how would you live your life?
Differently.
Right.
Yeah.
You would go to that girl that you've been seeing and be like, fuck yeah, I'm going to die tomorrow. I'm going to freaking ask her out. Of course I am. You know?
yeah.
It's a hard mindset to keep in mind. Anyways, I think we've done an hour 40 minutes.
Whoa, shit.
Yeah.
There you go.
There it was.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Guys,
I think that was really good.
Great
I think
conversation.
This was really a pleasurable conversation because it was deep as fuck.
Yeah.
But we also got
Yeah,
some
man, I went
really
somewhere.
good points out of it.
Yes.
So I think I'm gonna
Really appreciate it.
Glad
Get
everyone
back
knows I'm not
and-
masturbating now.
get back and listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to plug? We said you have a podcast called Plantetinget.
We'll link it in the description.
Yeah, we'll link it in the description. I think your Instagram is...
Casper_kulhydrat.
We'll link that as well.
Yeah, I'm not that active on it at the moment, but I might be in the future.
All
so
right.
check it out.
Go check them out. And thank you so much for coming on.
My
See you
pleasure.
next week on The Burning Boat Show.